Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the Montezuma County Commissioners for June 27th. First thing on our agenda is a discussion. Nichole Glaser is not going to be here, but Jessica Thurman will be here to talk about this outdoor recreation grant that we basically have a $10,000 match for, and give us some advisement on that. So with that, Jessica, I know you have another meeting, and we'll get you going.
Yes, thank you for that. So I'll do my best. I don't have a whole lot of information. I was kind of asking it to jump in, and so I wanted to take an opportunity. I believe you guys did receive some information on it. We're asking just for the $10,000 for match for a strategic planning project that we're wanting to do involving tourism and outdoor recreation. I was here a couple weeks ago talking about tourism with you guys and the importance of that, and so this is just another leg of that work that we're wanting to follow up on, just to try to grab a good understanding of what our assets are in this community. We figured that if we could do a planning and strategic planning consultant and hire them with this grant dollars, that it could be beneficial to ongoing and future projects. So we're getting letters of support from the New Tribe, or requesting that from them, as well as the municipalities within Montezuma County, and it's promising that we are going to receive those, and so that extra $10,000 match that we receive from Montezuma County Commissioner, or from you guys, would definitely make that more favorable, as well as we're also wanting to work with Dolores County, and we're working on trying to get them to provide a match as well. So if we can get both of those matches as well as our letters of support, we should be in a really good favorable position for this grant. So keeping our fingers crossed on that.
Okay. You know, a lot of what the language was in there in that 300 words or less maximum basically describes everything, you know, that we've been talking about for a long time. You know, Kinder Morgan is a finite resource. It says 20 years. I'm not sure if we'll get 20 years, but we might. And then also to our agricultural industry, because of the drought, you know, the impacts that's been having on the agricultural industry. So to be able to diversify and move things into a different direction with our outdoor recreation, I think is pretty wise. Something else, and Commissioner Copenhaver, just to bring you up to speed, that we had discussed earlier, that you know, along with the second tranche of the ARPA funds that we're getting, you know, a lot of that, you know, we are able to assist with some of the matching funds. So this is a very small match to kind of give us a path or a direction of what, you know, how we might be able to diversify our economy as these two, or I shouldn't say two, but specifically Kinder Morgan starts to dwindle and fade away even more. And not just Kinder Morgan, but it's oil and gas in its entirety. So I don't know if I can add anything else to that. If you guys have had a opportunity to read that, we won't make a decision today, but we'll put it on a unfinished business for tomorrow. But it's basically to ask any questions that we might have of Jessica today.
Most definitely. And the other component I want to include as well is that our big push for this is to create more jobs. We're planning that this will bring at least 5 to 10 different jobs for the industry, as well as more that could spin out further from that. So that's another big, huge component that we definitely want to focus on, with diversifying the industry and supporting our tourism industry as much as we can.
Questions?
Just thinking. What I see in our industry a lot of times is, and it doesn't really relate to this, but it might, is we have events over, you know, on the weekends and stuff, and it seems like there's 3, 4, and 5 events on one weekend, and then you go for 4 or 5 weeks and there's nothing going on. It's like the Celtic Fair was this weekend, which was the only thing going on, and was really well attended. And I could be wrong about something else, but it was really well done, I thought. So we could string these out and have something every weekend instead of something, then 6 events on the same weekend, I think it'd help out.
Most definitely.
Uh,
And that's a big goal of this, is to highlight and look and see what are our assets with, our festivals, with our natural resources as well specifically.
Right, and I see, Moab has a coordinator, an event coordinator. And they say, here's the open dates, this would be a good thing, and it works really well up there for them. But I don't know how it would relate to outdoor recreation, I don't know.
Oh, sure, we'll find out.
Any other questions?
No.
I think more than anything, if we get this and we get it put together, it gives us a direction of how to diversify
Right.
bigger than anything, because we all see the writing on the wall. We see what's happening, and we know it's gonna just continue to happen, and if we don't get a little more diversity, we're gonna be worse off. So, again, we can't make any decisions today, but we will put it under unfinished business, so if you can add that to the agenda under unfinished business for tomorrow, Mr. McLean, we can then discuss any further if we need to, and then make that decision for that match.
Wonderful, we appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you very
Please
much.
have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Too. Okay, next thing on our agenda, we're gonna have our attorney. Gosh, you get to occupy the rest of the meeting. So, a lot of things that we have coming up. We have a discussion on the new laws regarding the overtime pay for employees, and I think, do we have Phaedra and Lynn both to interact with us on this one, or?
And I think I can kind of handle this too.
Okay.
Certainly Phaedra and Lynn can jump in anytime they want, but in essence, Colorado's enacted a new overtime and minimum pay standards act. It was an order that was signed by the governor, and it was effective January 1st, 2022. What it says is that, at least what's pertinent to this discussion, is that comp time for hours, more than 40 hours a week worked, is no longer allowed. And so overtime is required for any employee that's a non-exempt employee that works more than 40 hours in a week. So that's basically what it says. Overtime pay has to be paid out at 1.5 times regular pay. Again, that was effective January 1st of 2022. I think it kind of slipped through the cracks with the HR turnover and some of that stuff. It was just brought to my attention last week. What I'm recommending at this point is that we pay out all the comp time that folks have accrued for 2022. So my understanding is that Phaedra and Lynn can come up with that calculation. Then we'll pay that out at 1.5 times. And then moving forward, comp time will not be accumulated anymore. The employee handbook will need to be changed to show that. We'll work on those changes. It was kind of a quick turnaround. We just learned about this at the end of last week, but we'll get those changes made and get you a new handbook probably next week. But at this point, that's where we're at. Pretty straightforward. Moving forward, if you work more than 40 hours in a week, you get overtime pay. It also applies for anything 12 consecutive hours worked. So if you work a shift that carries overnight or something like that, that's the way to work.
Right. So, we do have that. Thank you, Lynn and Phaedra, for giving that to us. Basically, it comes out to the amount of $33,451.69 to pay out or to get the comp time off of the books for all of the departments that are listed. So again, this just brings us into compliance. Then we're in compliance with the statute, and we should be good to go. So is that something that we need to vote on tomorrow? Do we need to put that under unfinished business also, or is that just a compliance?
I think that's just that's a compliance
anyway?
thing, and then the changes to the handbook obviously will need to be voted on.
Right,
And
but that may take you a couple days to get that put
yeah,
together
I
before that comes
anticipate
up.
that we won't have that handbook to you guys before a week from tomorrow. Possibly, I think we can get it done by then, maybe. So,
Well, by the end of July, I mean, give us a month, give you plenty of time, and then the changes will be able to be voted on, and, I mean, we have to be compliant anyway, we just
Absolutely.
have to change the handbook to be compliant.
And this is something that counties all around the state are going through. I looked up the handbooks for Larimer County, for instance, and they've still got the old rules on the books, just like we do. So, so this is something that we're certainly not the only ones, and we're just gonna have to do this way, so.
Okay, so approval of overtime then is gonna come from the department heads, because now we're gonna change, I mean, I can hear I
Yeah.
can hear what's gonna happen, you know, who then is,
Well, it certainly creates an interesting situation because of the budgeting that was done for this year without this rule in place.
And
And
that was
so,
my question, do we need to, I mean, it's a small amount, but we might look at amending the budget.
but
Yeah.
we don't have to do that until the
No.
end of the year anyway, so that doesn't matter. We're just gonna have to be cautious to make sure that all the department heads through Lynn basically know that, hey, this has to be an approved, overtime through your
So I
department.
can give you a small example of that, because my department does that, and that's because the guys are on call.
Right.
Every week somebody's on call, and for us, the compensation that I agreed upon many years ago now was, you will get 4 hours of comp time on the books, just for being on call, because you can't leave town, you can't make plans, you have to be here.
Yeah.
And if you go to the sheriff's office, and it's mostly because of the sheriff's office, right, because they're open 24 hours a day. So, I have not had any overtime in my budget. Therefore, now this goes away, how do these guys get compensated when there's no budget for it? And that would be a good example of how do we deal with that going forward, because we still have to pay them. And if we don't have the overtime budget to pay them, then it's gonna have to be amended.
Yeah,
Send the bill to the state.
yeah. They made the law, let them pay for it.
Well, I don't disagree with that.
Well, but we can amend it at the end of the
Yeah.
year too, because you're gonna actually know what that number is.
Yes.
So,
Would probably be more accurate if that
it would be accurate because you're gonna
They're
know.
gonna know, it makes it easier for budgeting purposes.
And we do that typically, you know, at the end of the year anyway, but you're gonna kinda know, if you look back at your historical comp time numbers, what you can put into an overtime budget
Right.
moving forward. So,
Road and bridge is gonna be affected, because,
What-
you know, you never know when it's gonna snow, or we're gonna flood something out.
Road,
Everybody's
bridge,
gonna be
maintenance, and
affected.
IT, I think are gonna be your three
Yeah,
major culprits.
and what I don't see in here is sheriff's office.
well, and then there's gonna be some things to look at, like, for instance, when you have on-call employees, I mean, that's not necessarily working time. Being on-call is not working
It
time.
isn't,
But if
so-
they go out and work, then obviously, that's a different story.
It is a discussion we have to have in the future anyway, maybe for next year, how do we deal with the on-call employees? Because I truly believe they should be compensated something for having to give up their weekend, because they literally can't go anywhere, they have to be within the area.
so let me ask you a question. Why would they give up their weekends and you just put them on a rotating basis that week? So you don't work, I'll just say Monday, Tuesday, and if it's every 3 weeks or
Saturday,
4
Sunday,
weeks or
yeah.
whatever,
We
then,
did talk about that,
because
we have discussed that.
so
It's not out of the question, we have discussed.
I guess we just have to, to
Department
me,
heads
it's,
are gonna have to
department
figure
heads are gonna have to
It's
figure it out.
something we have to figure out.
Because just to give away comp time for, I gotta be careful how I say this, cause I don't want it to sound like,
Well, you're not really giving it away, because what I'm doing is saying, okay, you stayed home on Saturday because you're on call, but if you need to take Monday off, you're still gonna get paid for it. It's like, either way, you're still kind of working, you know what I mean? You're just not at work, you're available.
Yeah. You gotta be
I
at the
think,
point
I
where
think
you
it's
can
a
drop
further
everything and go
discussion. I
work.
think because it's just a way of moving your schedules around, which you guys have the flexibility to do that. But I think what we have to watch out is that people aren't getting comp time
Just to get.
for
comp.
on-call pay, because that's a totally different discussion, and I think that's what you're asking.
That is.
So, I'm kind of a bad, because of what I came with, there was no such thing. You're on call 24/7, it didn't matter, you never got compensated for anything. So, if, obviously different, but, on-call pay and then actually going out and working are two different things. If you're out working, getting comp time, or now it's gonna be overtime, I understand that. However, just to, I mean, it doesn't mean that you, just, what is
So-
the criteria? Are you within 30 minutes, or what is it? Because, and we don't have to go any
Yeah.
further if that's what you're saying, then. That's something, that's a future discussion, just be thinking about it. So, we'll add that. We'll go from there. Okay, all right. Good?
Yep.
Excellent, all
Yep.
right.
You wanna jump right on to the next one then?
Yep, so we've got the discussion of the fiber management agreement with the city. Jim, if you'll just thumb down to the very bottom of that, because that's the pertinent part. It's the last pages in this document. Basically, if you guys will recall, we entered into the agreement with the city, whereby they're gonna do maintenance on our fiber network, we're gonna provide management. This last amendment, just go up a little bit, Jim. I mean, in essence, this final amendment amends the agreement. Initially, it was a 5-year agreement, yep, right there. Initially, it was a 5-year agreement, this amends it to a 25-year agreement. The reason for this is that a lot of the big internet providers didn't wanna come in and invest in infrastructure for such a short term.
Short.
They wanted a longer term, and so that's what this seeks to rectify, and I'll have this for you guys to make a decision on tomorrow.
Okay. Pretty simple, is all we're changing is 5 to 25,
Yeah.
Yep,
which was the
exactly.
discussion that we've had. Okay. I don't see any issues with this at all.
That's pretty easy.
It's actually,
Pretty straightforward.
really works in our benefit. It's a 25-year,
What it will allow is it'll allow for more providers to come in and utilize our service.
okay.
Especially the bigger providers.
Yep.
And that's what they're really after, is those larger providers.
So this is just nothing more than the second amendment?
Yep.
To the contract?
Yep.
All right, well, that was easy. All right, now we'll go to FMLI, family, and we have our new HR
Hi, so,
director.
Is the mic on?
long story short, we ran across this, came up before Shaq left, and, there is a new statute that was written, and it's different for, sorry. Oh, good, okay. For government compared to private businesses, and local governments have 3 choices, whether to participate in the family statute, decline all participation, or decline employer participation. I would recommend declining all participation. It's more of a social insurance type thing where we would be having to collect premiums for both the employer and the employee, a certain percentage of their salary. And we would have to collect that for a year before they could even start using it. And we already kind of give them an option during open enrollment and or hired on as a new employee to have access to a supplemental insurance like AFLAC, which already pays out 60% of their wages, which is similar to this. So, and as a government, we would have to take a vote on this anytime before January 1st of 2023. We just thought sooner the better. Then we have to notify all our employees of our vote. And then,
So,
then we have to vote every 8 years to either
So is
opt
this,
in or opt out.
this would be just like paying dues? This is just a
Right.
dues?
A certain percentage of wages that we pay. Like on the,
And it's
if
not
you
effective for a year.
participate, It says, just like private employers, local governments which choose to fully participate in FAMLI will share responsibility for funding of the program. So we're funding a program of social insurance.
Yeah, we're
Is what this is.
funding the startup costs for a year so they can get on their feet.
Right, exactly.
The other thing that I think is really important to understand with this is, even if we opt out, individual employers can still opt in, or individual employees can still opt in. So if you're an individual employee and you decide this is something you want, you can opt in, and then there's a system that's similar to what they do for, say, like an independent contractor or a
Right.
self-employed individual, where they'll pay a certain premium and then receive the benefits on the back end. So I think that's just really important for everybody out there listening to understand. Just
Right.
because the employer, being the county, opts out of this in the interest of not paying higher premiums, which in essence drive up our costs and prevent us from maybe giving back to employees in other ways. You know,
The
we're gonna opt
individuals
out, and then the
has to-
individuals, if they think this is beneficial, can still opt
They
in.
can't, right, if it's beneficial to them, so they still have a choice.
They still have the choice to do that or facilitate that on their own. It's
So
just that we won't be their middleman or their money manager or anything like that.
the other thing that has to happen with this, just so you guys are aware, this is something you can take a vote on tomorrow to opt out if that's what you decide to do. Then we actually have to post the notice that we did opt out for 30 days. We'll post that to the employees around the county
Mhm.
in visible places and make sure that information gets to them so they understand their rights and their options moving forward.
Correct.
Okay. And then this is the resolution, it'll go with the opting out, and we'll have that under unfinished business tomorrow also.
Going back to the, comp time, how much comp time has been taken? You have any idea over this first half of the year?
For the first half of this year, I do not. Phaedra was the one who produced all those numbers. I don't know if she broke it down for you between last year and this year. I don't have those numbers.
She doesn't have it broken down between last year and this year, but she does have it by
Department, I believe.
department.
Right.
So, like the hours here, like say admin, it has the hours and then what the cost is. And then we go to the assessor.
Well, the reason I was asking is that in the next year, I was wanting to know how much we're gonna be hit for overtime pay. Because we're gonna have to,
Well, they're just gonna have to put it into their line item, because they're gonna know what their historical value is for the last 3 years, real easy of what. So instead of comp time, they're just gonna add it as an overtime
I
line
think it's
item
gonna be a
for.
combination of budget line item and scheduling, probably
Yeah,
for most.
and or
right,
scheduling
and/or
like we were just talking
department,
about.
Yeah, it's just, it's change. It's hard.
Because, they're compensated for 1.5 time for comp time anyway, so if they work 8 hours, they're gonna get 12 hours of comp time. So they're still compensated at 1.5 times comp time, so they can just put those numbers back into a number of dollars.
all I was getting at was, I understand all that. It's just
Right.
how many hours have already been used by people taking comp time so that we have an idea
Oh,
of what that's gonna be total for the whole year.
Well, I would say if this is accumulative to now, is
Up
kinda
till
what it looks
present.
So
like.
this is
Yeah.
accumulated since the first of the year.
Right.
But
And
some of
there's
that comp
just a
time
few
has
people who
probably
have
been used
Quite a bit.
by some people, so that 33,000 isn't a total of what,
Oh, no.
Yeah, you
No.
don't know how many days have
for
been
this
taken
half
off.
of the year. See, that's what I was trying to figure out, is how much
Yeah.
we're gonna be
I think it's for
paying
this,
out. I mean, how much the items are gonna cost us.
I don't think she broke it down that way. I think she
Well,
broke it
I-
down
can,
just to
actually,
be
That's
clear and
okay.
done with it.
can you get her in here, because
Sure.
it's a fair question to ask.
Miranda should be back by now, I think. That's the only.
But the way I
reason
read
she
it
didn't
is,
come before.
this report was, from 6/5 to 6/18.
Mhm.
So this is reflective of just that time period,
Yeah. But,
or I'm sorry, 6/5.
yeah, yeah.
So we can multiply it by 12.
How long, they can only accumulate up to 40 hours, right?
Per the handbook, yeah, before they have to take it, it's 40
I think
hours,
it's-
right?
I think it's dependent by years of service though, too. I think
Oh.
you can accumulate more if you've been 5 years or 10 years.
10 years, 15 years, so, yeah.
Might be able to find the envelope.
And here again, I think the biggest thing is, it's gonna be with the departments to say, look, you're gonna work now from Monday to Thursday, and you're
I
gonna
think
work
we have to set some,
Tuesday to
I think
Monday.
we have to set some guidelines too.
Yeah, we can at least double that.
There's your answers. That's our current one. Let's see if we can find comp. Okay.
What is it?
I can get the numbers for what's been accumulated so far, but it's, I mean, it's pretty close right now, because some has been used.
That's what I was interested, how much it's been used,
I would
like in the
have-
first half of the year, just an estimate, I mean,
I couldn't even tell you, I'd have to go look.
yeah. I was
So-
just trying to figure out what it's actually, how much accumulates during the whole year, what it's
Right.
gonna be.
And it's gonna be different times of the year for different departments, like road and bridge
Yeah,
is the summer or snow plow, or when they're doing plowing snow. Yeah. But I can definitely come up with that, or get that number.
So
When
this
our-
is,
When is our next department head meeting?
That's a good question.
we can schedule it anytime we want to. I think it's scheduled quarterly, and we just had one last month. But I think with all of the changes, I think where your head is that we probably should get this out sooner than later to all of the department heads so that they know what's going on.
I would suggest bringing all the department heads in for a meeting within the next month and having us sit down because, quite frankly, with this, it's gonna significantly impact budgets.
What works best for you, Phaedra? If you look at your calendar for the next month, and we can do it, Shaq was usually doing those on Wednesdays. What? But it doesn't have to be on a Wednesday, it can be,
Just let me know what day.
well, let's pick a day, because I agree with Ian. I mean, we already sitting here had a lot of questions as far as scheduling.
I think the
Oh.
last time we did it on a Monday morning.
We can do it on a Monday morning, does that work for you all?
But it was like at 10 o'clock or something, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, something like that, because you guys came in and then you were able to just stay for the meeting, for the workshop.
yeah.
Okay. That
Yeah,
sounds
that's what we
correct.
did
Does that
too,
work?
I think,
Yeah,
That
yeah.
work better for you too?
I think that was,
it does.
Okay, let's do it on Monday then.
that's been at least 2 months ago though.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Well, then
I was
let's,
thinking it was closer to the 1st of April,
What
but
about the
maybe
next
I'm wrong.
workshop?
Our next workshop won't be until the 11th, because the 4th is,
I think that'll work out good.
Don't have
Yeah.
one next
Schedule.
week, so it'd be the week after.
Let's just
let's,
do that.
let's say July 11th at 10 a.m.
Right on
So you'll be able to get out an email, that way we can get it discussed with everybody.
Okay,
7-Eleven?
7-Eleven, 10 AM. Sure you don't wanna do 7-Eleven, 11?
10 a.m. Department head.
You thinking like 10?
10 a.m., let's do that. Also too, Vicky, is she still doing her little newsletter to all the department heads after our meetings?
Yes.
So that would be kind of a segue into our conversation for 7-Eleven after we make these decisions based on this tomorrow. That, you know, we need to have this discussion sooner than later so that they know how to manage that. Okay. That's where you were headed, Ian?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. And then the resolution for the opt-out is already there. Okay. All right. Thank you, Lynn. Next, we have our conversation with the NCA, and that would be Mr. Copenhaver and Mr. MacLaren.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so at this point, just to kind of give you an update on what's happened since last week with the NCA discussions, Commissioner Copenhaver and I met with our NCA work group last week. I believe that meeting was on Thursday. We talked about some of the issues that we had with the language and the protections for the upstream users, the small upstream users. You know, to be totally honest, there wasn't a lot of movement from most of the groups in the work group for adjusting that language. A lot of the stakeholders were pretty insistent that language had to stay as is. You know, I've racked my brain. I've exchanged some emails with some folks. Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, what we proposed was language that would take out any ambiguity and that would provide protections for those small upstream users. Quite frankly, the stakeholders in the NCA discussions, they don't want that ambiguity taken out. They want that ambiguity there. You know, whether or not it's going to automatically subject you know, the individuals with the stock ponds or the small ditches upstream to Section 7 analysis, I think that's debatable. I mean, certainly, you know, over the last several decades, this river has been managed as a wild and scenic river. Those upstream users have never had any issues. But, you know, what you guys need to know is, as this thing is currently written, certainly the door is open for, you know, at some point, somebody to come forward and argue that under this NCA, those upstream users could be subjected to the unreasonably diminished standard in the Section 7 analysis. I don't know if Commissioner Copenhaver has anything to add.
No, I mean, that's the whole problem here is that I think their feeling is that they need that in there, but, and I think the big thing that they think they need that in there for is because Congress has actually designated what a large project is. And that large project is 30,000 acre feet or larger. I believe that's what they said a large project was. Well, so basically, if you know what that is, everything else less than that is a small project. And so I think their concern is that without that in there, you could have some type of project up that river at less than that 30,000 acre feet.
29.5.
And there'd be an argument that you couldn't subject it to the
Section 7.
to the rest of
Whatever it is, yeah.
the covered land that's actually under the
Yeah.
under the NCA. I mean, that's what I think their reasoning is for wanting to hold on to that so hard. It's just that makes like what Ian's saying, every little bitty project could be subject to it also. I mean, if somebody has to change their head gate or anything, or the diversion dam in the river, it's a possibility with that language, that they could be subject to this scrutiny, just like it was a bigger, larger project. It's never happened. This language is in the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. It's never happened since that I know of, since it's been on the river. But I think it's like Ian, we were talking about the other day, and Ian said that, as this water gets shorter, which, we're gonna go through these drought cycles, and there's no doubt about it. It's a possibility that all these things could actually be brought forward and scrutinized, just like what he's talking about. Even a small project could be put under scrutiny for this, the way that language is. And the landowner's gonna be forced to fight that. And economically,
But,
are we putting a hardship on them?
Right.
That's the big question.
but potentially right now, it's being managed as Wild and Scenic, so they would be under that scrutiny right now, correct?
Yes, I mean, as long as it's being managed as a wild and scenic, yes.
So with it, even as it stands right now, unless it was potentially larger, it wouldn't really affect them. I mean, yeah, I guess potentially they could still have to go through it.
I mean, certainly Commissioner Copenhaver and I's approach in the work group was, we wanted to be sure that those small users had protection. That was our goal. We've got some language in there that conceivably provides some protection. I don't think the language as it's written, it doesn't say those small users are going to be subject to the unreasonably diminished standard. There's a little bit of wiggle room in that statute. It says subject to the requirements of the section, then it's got limitations that say these guys aren't gonna be subject to it. So there's an argument to be made. I think that our goal was to get the ambiguity out of that statute, because quite frankly, a lot of these small users upstream may not, as Commissioner Copenhaver said, have the resources to fight the legal battles. So that's what we've tried to do. That's what we've pushed hard to do for the last several months.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, we came up against a wall last week.
But the rules are not written, the rules, if this passes, then the rules have to be
Well,
basically written.
so
but with
management
this in mind, the
management
plan.
rules will be written, but this rule will, this rule, if it passes, will be written.
The problem is the management rules are gonna be for the NCA in the covered land. You're not gonna be able to write management rules for that
For the upstream.
upstream.
Gotcha.
You're not gonna be able to do that. I don't think,
No, I don't think you're gonna be
That would be
managing the
over- that'd be
upstream area
overreach.
for
Yeah, so
one.
you can't.
And for two, the management rules do have to follow the NCA.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't have management rules that are operating outside the statutory construction. So, what's in this is gonna guide the management rules.
Yeah, the whole,
Yep.
gotcha.
And I guess maybe you could put something in there at that time to help with that up there, I don't know. It's just that ambiguity of not knowing
I think-
for sure.
I think-
That's what we're fighting with.
And I think the reality is, if it goes on the books this way, there's gonna be ambiguity. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna be, I think just being totally honest with you, I don't think you're gonna be able to get this out in
Oh.
that management process. There's just no way.
It's
It's
gonna
it is
be
what
in
it is.
there and
Yeah.
we'll work with it and deal with it.
And it's like, we told them, we're not holding this up over this deal. We're not wanting them to stop as far as going forward with the introduction of the bill because of this, but we were trying to get that clarification in there, but like Ian said, it's been kind of run up against the wall as far as them
The wall
changing
is-
anything.
The wall is final at this point, is what you're saying. There's no way around it. Over it.
We're still talking. We just told them we're still discussing this, trying to figure out a way to reword it, but not to hold everything back because
Gotcha.
of it.
Gotcha.
I think, like Ian said, there is, to me, to read it, It's not, I mean,
Well-
those guys should be protected, but they may have to go to court to show that they are protected. That's what that's what we were trying to get out of.
And just so you guys understand, I mean, when a court goes to look at a statute, the first thing they look at when they're trying to decide what the statute means is the plain language of the statute. If the plain language of the statute is ambiguous, then they try to figure out what the intent was. What did the people who wrote this intend? You know, I think that there would be an argument to be made that the intention was to limit those small users because we have language that says limitations, and then it's got those small users. So that would be the argument. You know, on the flip side, I think, you know, if somebody were gonna push against these small-scale users, the argument would be, well, the plain language says, subject to the limitations of this section. And one of the limitations of that section is the Section 7 analysis, the unreasonable demand standard. So that would be the court fight. I mean, that's where that would go. You know, I don't know how it turns out. I mean, obviously I'm not the judge looking at it, and when it comes to statutory interpretation, you see all kinds of funky things. It's ambiguous.
And it's like what me and Ian were talking about at a later time is, in order for somebody to actually show that any of those projects above the reservoir change the flow out the other end of that reservoir in the covered area, it's got a monumental task as far as I'm concerned, because how you're not gonna change that fish pool. It is what it is. The only thing that it could possibly change is on those years where it does spill, you could possibly change how much it spills, but it's gonna be minute. So it's, you know, as far as that in changing one of the outstanding remarkable values below there is pretty slim. I mean, I think you got a big task to prove that.
I mean, I think as the river sits now, you couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I mean, you
Yeah.
know, now,
No, you
we don't know how the river's gonna sit in 50 years.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
that's,
true.
you know, that's really the thing. And so right now, it's not gonna be an issue for those guys upstream. In 50 years, who knows?
I think that's what we
Okay.
We have a meeting this week. You know, we're gonna continue to work, continue to see what we can get done. But, you know, I wanted to bring this up to you guys because they are shooting to introduce this bill,
like the 12th of July. or
the
something.
12th, 11th or 12th of July.
Yeah.
So, you know, at this point, we have written that letter of support, and you know, you guys need to be aware that this is what the language says now.
Right.
This is what's rolling forward. At this point, we're supporting it. And so, you know, at this point, my understanding is we're supporting it, and we'll continue to do that until I hear otherwise.
Correct, okay. And that's what we had all agreed on and voted on, so we all signed the letter, so I think
Yeah.
we're moving on.
Okay.
All right? Anything else?
That's it.
Gentlemen, anything else?
No.
Okay,
Anything?
well then that will bring us to the end of our discussion. We'll add these three items under unfinished business tomorrow. The OREC grant matching funds. The handbook will go out till July 31st. The Second Amendment to the fiber contract, and the FAMLI recommendation to opt out with the resolution.
Yep.
So, all right, with that, we will end our workshop for the 27th. Thank you all.